Ilya Sheyman, thanks for joining us here at the UpTake booth.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us why you're running for Congress in Illinois.
Sure. Well, my family moved to this country when I was 4 years old as Jewish refugees from the former Soviet Union. They worked their way up, lived out, the quintessential American dream of through your own hard work and perseverance, as well as some support from your community and government, you can make it so the next generation can do better. And I think when you look at what's going on in Washington, D.C., what you see is a Republican Party that's intent on just dismantling those foundations that have made millions of middle-class lives like mine and so many others possible. And the other thing I see is a Democratic Party that far too often just fails to stand up and fight back for the progressive values that'll make a difference in people's lives. So I'm in this race to help rebuild the middle class and just restore the idea of that American dream that made my life possible.
What might be your core issues? What would you fight for?
I think there's three things that I hear about all across the district. Number one is we have to put people back to work using every tool in our toolbox, from federal funding, state funding, supporting small businesses, and also providing a little life vest to those who are without work, extending unemployment insurance, which the Republicans don't want to do. The second issue is we have to restore a sense of fairness to our tax system. The Bush tax cuts are the number one drivers of our deficit, and I think we have to roll them back and help rebuild the middle class. And then the final piece we have to talk about is how we invest in America's future, how we help build an infrastructure tomorrow, a green economy of tomorrow, rebuild our education system, set ourselves up for success in the 21st century.
Ilya, you were at MoveOn.org prior to this. Tell us what your position there was and what skills you learned that you may or may not use in the campaign.
Sure. Well, I was the National Mobilization Director at MoveOn, mostly working during a healthcare campaign. And I think the number one thing we saw in our healthcare campaign is that it is possible for outside groups and progressives all around the country to work together with progressive members of Congress, to organize together like we did on the public option, getting progressive champions in Congress to write letters, circulate them, stand up boldly, and showing that the progressive base will reward those who stand up and fight for us. And I think that's the skill set we need in Congress. Organizing both within Congress and with progressives on the inside and at the outside, and with our constituents to help actually govern. It's one thing to say that I'll fight to pass a jobs bill, put the American people back to work, and invest in the future. It's another thing to actually do the hard work of organizing inside and outside to get that done.
To those who would say that the passing of healthcare legislation led to the Republican takeover of the House in 2010, how would you react? And was it the legislation passing, or was it the messaging, the Democratic messaging of healthcare as it passed?
I think neither. I think the 2010 election was about jobs. The Republican Party claimed to be on the side of the American people on jobs, and in the past few months we've seen the truth. They've been pursuing an ideological agenda, defunding Planned Parenthood, voting to end Medicare as we know it, instead of introducing a single bill that would put the American people back to work. And I think the 2012 election is going to be a reaction to that. Again, it's going to be about the economy and jobs, and I don't think it's just about messaging. I think it's about promising real ways to put people back to work and then delivering. I think the American people are smart, and they expect their leaders to deliver on their promises.
How about any particular issues in Illinois that you might want to talk about? Enlighten us.
I got my start as a community organizer, working to shine a spotlight on a broken school funding system that just leaves too many children behind. And I think this is a problem that is present in Illinois and all across the country, that as state budgets shrink, we're actually seeing the reverse effect of the stimulus happening on the state level. States are laying off school teachers. States are cutting benefits and services. So I think one of the keys is, as we think about how we put people back to work, that we also have federal investment back in the state and local level so that we're not fighting against each other. Ultimately, this jobs crisis will only be solved if the federal government plays a role, state and local governments play a role, and if the private sector plays a role. And I think it's far past time for us to actually say all of these efforts have to go full steam ahead in order to actually put people to work.
Ilya Sheyman, thanks for joining us. Ilya Sheyman running for Congress in Illinois. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much. Always a pleasure.